Welcome to D&D D&D. See what I did there? This is a discussion about the design and development of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Steven Schubert. I'm the development manager and lead developer for D&D. With me is Rich Baker, who is...
Yep. Hi, folks. I'm Rich Baker. I'm the design manager for D&D.
So what we're going to do today, basically, is go over a couple of things, some rules elements that we use, or that we had lots of design and development discussions about. We're going to give you a couple examples of those, kind of walk through those kind of quickly, and then after that, we're going to just move on to a Q&A, because I'm sure you guys have a lot more questions about D&D that we can hopefully provide the answers to. So that's what we're here for. We're going to talk a little bit about character themes. Has anybody here seen the Dark Sun book yet? One, okay, a couple people. It's awesome. You should all get one as soon as you can. Rodney out there says, yes, it's awesome, it's great. Rodney Thompson, everybody. The character themes are a new concept we introduced in Dark Sun. We'll talk a little bit about where we came up with them, how these guys came up with them, and where they ended up when we were done, and some of the mechanics associated with that. We're going to talk a little bit about Gamma World. Even though we work on Dungeons & Dragons, we also work on other role-playing game systems that are based in Dungeons & Dragons, like the Gamma World game, which is coming out sometime.
October, I think.
October, he thinks, and I think now too. And then we'll touch a little bit on the D&D Essentials line, which is the new set of products coming out in September.
Yes.
See, I know one. And we'll talk a little bit about the not character generation, some of the concepts of Essentials and the classes of Essentials and what we're doing with those books. And then we'll have the Q&A. So that's that. We're going to start with character themes, and I'm going to let Rich take it from here.
Okay. Basically, our idea here is that in the seminar, we do want to just try and give you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to try and explain a little bit of what we do and why we do it. So the first example we have here is the notion of character themes, which are debuting in the Dark Sun campaign guide. A character theme, for those of you guys who haven't really seen it yet, is essentially, it's a little bit like the character kits from 2nd edition D&D, if any of you guys remember that, in that it's sort of a third piece of your character identity. It's for example, you have race, class, and then theme. So, race might be elf, class might be ranger, theme might be wasteland nomad, or dune trader, or gladiator, right? These are all very different roles that put a very different spin on your character beyond just a simple identity of your race and class. The reason we decided to go with an idea like themes, because we set off, when we first set out to design Dark Sun, our first initial discussions rotated around the idea of describing unique Athasian characters via the same lens of character builds and different class options that we had basically used before with like Eberron and Forgotten Realms. And we hit a roadblock early on in that the darn gladiator kept jumping up in our face, and we just didn't know what to do with it. An obvious answer would have been just to create a gladiator class, and in fact we had very long, prolonged arguments and discussions about whether or not we should just do the gladiator as a martial controller class. But the sort of irreducible argument that kept coming up with like the gladiator was, so what is a gladiator? And chances are, 99% of the time, it's going to be a guy who fights in the arena. Well, who fights in the arena, right? Is it only gladiators, or can other people fight in the arena too? And it's like, well, no. Fighters might fight in the arena, and battle minds, and rogues, and rangers, and very unhappy wizards. Whoever gets thrown into the arena would probably be considered a gladiator. And once we hit that sort of logical hang-up, we said, well, all right, well, hang on. What's another way to skin this particular cat? Because clearly we have something here that's a concept that could extend across several different classes and be appropriate for a wide variety of characters. And we realized we were dealing with something that was not just a single class, or even something that you would want to multi-class into, and thereby lose out on options for taking other multi-classes, right? Just so you could say, hey, I'm a gladiator because look, I'm half gladiator. I got the gladiator multi-classing feats, or I'm a hybrid gladiator or something like that. We basically wanted to say, no, anybody who finds themselves in this situation should be able to have this character, be part of their character identity. And that really opened up a tremendous amount of design space for us once we started saying, well, what else would be like Gladiator? What set of things could you come up with that would be other options about that same scale? And that's where we started hitting ideas like a Dune Trader. Well, okay, probably a rogue, but anybody who works for a merchant house or crosses the desert or is busy, involved in trying to make a living by being a trader in the sands of Athos would want to call themselves a Dune Trader. Templar, Templar, might be a cleric, but it might also be like a warlock or a wizard, somebody who's basically one of the Sorcerer King's, chosen, favored minions to kind of go out and enforce his will. A warlord might be a Templar, right? The guy who essentially is a commander in one of the Sorcerer King's armies. All these sorts of things started to come into focus when we realized that themes needed to be something that could apply to a bunch of different characters. You have any thoughts you want to add on that?
Yeah. Mechanically, when we were looking at themes, we're also trying to figure out how do we allow characters to take powers or feats or something, or paragon paths that are related to their theme, without necessarily just giving them a flat upgrade and say, okay, you get everything that you would get as a fighter, but then here are also these gladiator things you can do every round and give you another 5 powers or something. We are concerned about things like what we call hand size, but really it's the number of powers you have to keep track of, whether you're using power cards or whether you've got them printed off on your character sheet or written down even. The more powers you get, the harder it is to figure out, or at least the more time it takes to figure out what it is you want to do every round. So that was one consideration. And also, how do we, if we're going to do things like powers, and we talked early on in the process about getting what amounts to a power replacement scheme, kind of like multi-classing is, where you can take, in multi-classing, you can take a feat to swap out one of your powers for a multi-class power. You swap out your 3rd level wizard power for your rogue 3rd level power. We're doing the same kind of thing here, and we also actually did this in Skill Powers in Player's Handbook 3, where we're just giving you options. If you're a gladiator, here are some powers at the various levels that you can take. You can say, well, I want to take the gladiator power as my 3rd level attack power, so you have that option, and you can select it. It doesn't increase the number of powers you have to play with, but it does give you a broader array of options to choose from when you're building your character. So we worked that in. We looked at how to acquire the theme. One of the discussions was, should this, and in fact, initially, which I'll get to in the next slide here, this is sort of a look at how the themes, parts of the themes evolved. Initially, these were going to be feat buy-ins, where you say, well, I'm going to be a gladiator, and so I'll take the gladiator feat, or in this case, this is the Templar theme, so I'll take the Templar-themed feat, which is Hand of the King, and it would give me a bonus of some sort, and then also I get this feat power. And this was, of course, changed a little bit. We decided, well, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to go through most of your career and then decide, because you're taking a feat at 12th level, that suddenly you're a Templar. That might make sense in some characters, obviously, but we wanted it to be part of the early experience in Dark Sun to say, you know what, I am a gladiator, I am a Templar, I am a Dune Trader. So we're just giving you the power in Dark Sun. We figure that not only has Dark Sun set a precedent for characters that are a little bit higher power level, but we're giving you something that's a little bit better than an at-will power, but not really necessarily on par with all of your encounter powers in terms of output. And we're just saying, you know what, you can select this power and you have that. And then we make it scale so that it goes up, it gets a little bit better as you go up in level. And yeah, so that was the evolution. We essentially take this thing that was a feat buy-in. We instead say, make it part of character creation. Make it that third leg that we're talking about, where you have your class, your race, and then you choose your theme as part of that creation. Question?
Is the intent that themes will be used outside
We do have some ideas of I'm pretty loud anyway, but
It's for the recordings.
yes, I know. We do have some expectation that themes are a pretty cool bit of technology. We want to use them. We want to make sure that they come to core D&D pretty quickly. So we have some ideas in mind about how we're going to debut those. I just can't talk about them quite yet. However, if you come to the D&D preview seminar on Saturday, I would not be surprised if that came up.
What he said. Another thing you'll notice here, a mechanical change, a small development thing that we did with the themes is the initial design shows, I mean, you got this attack power that you get to use, which is, you know, sort of cool. But you notice the ability scores are tied to specific ability scores, right? That the idea was, well, the Templar would be geared toward specific character classes initially, and the ability scores typically mapped those. But ultimately we decided, well, we don't really want to have too many restrictions on what you're choosing as your theme. If you decide that the Wizard Gladiator is really what you want to play, we don't want that character to be burdened essentially by an attack power that's based on con, dex, and strength when your int is your best stat. So in this case, your primary ability modifier becomes your attack stat, right? It's just make it as good as the rest of the powers you have. So if you're a gladiator and you're a wizard, you have at least one power that's as good as your wizard powers.
It does say Constitution, Wisdom, Charisma here, but then over on the other side it just says your primary stat.
Yes, that's right.
That's,
The
before
original,
and after,
yep.
but-
The before is on the left side and the after is on the right side. Yeah.
That's all right. It's all good.
But that's a little glimpse into themes, a little bit how they change. I mean, there's a lot of one of the things that actually happened with Dark Sun is we had the developers and the designers working together. Rodney Thompson spent a lot of time working with Rich on making sure that this stuff came in very clean. So by the time we really got into the development cycle for it, a lot of the mechanics had been settled down, and we were really able to focus on the story of, you know, what each of these themes were going to be and make sure we picked, what, 10 or 12? 10 really cool themes. So, and then there's Gamma World. We're going to have another seminar on Gamma World directly, I guess, tomorrow. When are you? Rich is doing that.
Saturday.
Or Saturday. That's right.
Yep.
It's in the schedule somewhere. And it's our new game. It's based on the D&D system. If you know how to play D&D, then you'll know how to play this. It differs in a couple of ways. We don't have a book full of classes and powers you select for your classes. You just roll what random themes you're going to be. If you're going to be a cockroach android and that's what you roll, then that's what you are. Gamma World's kind of fun that way. But because we built it within the context of the D&D game system, it's interoperable with D&D. You can take your D&D monsters if you need another encounter to throw in for your Gamma World game. You can just pull stuff out of the monster manual, and vice versa. If you want to take Gamma World monsters and have irradiated androids running through your D&D game, then you can do that as well. But they use the same core mechanics, and we were able to explore some game design ideas within Gamma World that are less traditional, I guess, for D&D, but yeah, and then we have an integrated card mechanic in there as well. You get decks of cards with the base set that provide random powers your characters can use during, and the treasure that they gain during the encounters. But more on that at Rich's seminar.